Thank you very much and welcome to the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan Town Hall meeting. By way of introductions, I'm Mike Wharton with the Sustainability Officer with Athens-Clarke County Unified Government. Also joining me, you just heard from Maggie Songster. She's our Energy and Conservation Specialist with the office. And we really do appreciate your time, the time you're investing and the effort and for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Other folks you're going to see on the call include team members from the South Face Institute and Green Links Analytics. These are partners with us on this project, and they'll be introducing themselves shortly, and they'll go into more detail on the planning effort. Next slide. So before we go any further, starting with a little overview of the Sustainability Office, back in 2019, the Mayor and Commission passed a resolution for Athens-Clarke County to be committed to moving the community toward a cleaner, healthier, and energy future. This included moving the government-owned or operated facilities to a clean and renewable energy stance by 2035 and helping Athens-Clarke County community transition by 2050. But this can't be done alone. Your voice and your thoughts and your active engagement is critical. So these efforts are going to take each and every one of us. So what you share with us tonight is we'll be shaping, and in the future as we go forward, we'll be shaping the plan that comes and also our future of transforming Athens. So a little bit about the Sustainability Office. We were created in 2017, and what our office does is bring together social, economic, and ecological resources to foster long-term sustainability. We're if you want to head to the next slide, Maggie, we're involved in strategic planning and provide technical information, resources, restoration work days, educational events, and lots of programming. We also create educational materials and resources. Some of the major areas the office is currently focused on include energy. Some examples are here on the screen. These are some of the solar and clean energy fuel projects that we've done, including the one in the lower left hand, which is the Cedar Creek reclamation site. We have a couple of fire stations, rec center. There's our public works area as well. So those have all been part of our solar effort. We also are involved in looking at the efficiency of buildings and the built environment. We work on fleet transformation and green infrastructure. Next one. Another major focus is on ecological resource management, and those examples include habitat restoration, native planting, invasive plant removal, biodiversity enhancement, and ecosystem services. So one of the things that Athens-Clarke County is committed to is taking care of the resources that it has in the natural world. We also are involved in green space and natural area evaluation and acquisition. An example of that is the Rock and Shoals addition of about 71 acres that occurred last July. That's the property in the lower left-hand corner. It is truly a gem here in Athens. Some of the other conservation initiatives that we've been involved in include water conservation, aquatic ecosystems, looking at flooding and floodplains, trash and pollution, and food availability. That weird piece of a contraption you see in the left-hand portion of the screen is called a trash trap. It's a pilot project that we have going on, looks at what trash flows through our streams. And the lower right-hand corner is the landfill, where we have a methane recapture, gas recapture. It converts it to energy. Up on the right is a diesel hybrid bus that we are looking at as a way of transforming that fleet from there. So those are some of our activities. And this slide outlines tonight's agenda. The first part of the meeting talks about the energy ecosystem and highlights the importance of clean and renewable energy transition. And this is going to be followed by a question and answer period. And Matt, we really want your participation and your thoughts. Again, thank you tonight for being here, and thank you for helping shape the future of Athens. And with that, I will turn it over to Megan O'Neill with South Face Institute to carry us through the rest of this meeting.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. My name is Megan O'Neill. I am the Program Manager for Policy and Sustainability Services at South Face Institute. We are an Atlanta-based 501c3 nonprofit. We've been around for over 40 years now, focusing on advancing sustainability and the nexus between the natural and built environments. We've been brought on to support Mike and his team in the development of this clean and renewable energy action plan. And we'll be partnering with our partner on this project, Green Link Analytics, to present out some content for you. To walk through the agenda for today, we're going to spend the first 30 to 40 minutes just providing some background on this commitment that the county has made, as well as some information on pathways to a clean energy transition. And then we're going to dedicate the bulk of tonight's session to Q&A. And I know Maggie gave a little tutorial up at the beginning of this presentation of the tech to get on the mic and speak with us, but we'll also resurface that before we get into the conversation portion here. I want to just acknowledge my colleagues from Southface that are here tonight as well, Bailey Shea and Aaron Gallagher, and we're happy to have them on here tonight, and Bailey will be supporting with the Q&A as well. So for tonight's agenda, we'll go through Athens's commitment, talk through why clean energy, and then transition over to clean energy in Athens specifically. So next slide, please, Maggie. And tonight's objectives are to share information about, actually, Maggie, never mind, I'm out of sync with the questions. So today's objectives are to share information on Athens's clean and renewable energy goal, as well as respond to any questions you may have on progress made to date in plan development. I want to stress the plan is not yet a plan. We are undergoing a plan development process right now, and that's why we want to connect with you. And then third is to gather your feedback on community priorities in clean and renewable energy planning. Next slide. And then questions for you to consider today, these are kind of to keep in the back of your mind as we're walking through the content, are what would you like to see prioritized in the clean energy plan? Which clean energy resources do you think should be used the most? What does success look like for you? How should we measure success? And how can we ensure that we are held accountable to the vision and goals in the Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan in the years to come? So just going to keep these things in mind. We want to have a conversation at the end of this meeting, and we want to address any concerns you may have, any questions, and relating to these sample questions here or anything else you can think of based on what you hear from us. Next slide. All right, here's the agenda again, and we'll go to the next slide. All right, so Athens has two goals that were laid out in its Clean and Renewable Energy Action Resolution. The first one applies to the unified government itself. So by the year 2035, Athens-Clarke County government for its facilities, which includes buildings like City Hall, water reclamation facilities, so cleaning, treating water, basic government buildings, and facilities and public safety buildings, will all be powered by 100% clean and renewable energy sources produced for or on Athens-Clarke County government properties. And by the year 2050, they'll decrease the use of third-party renewable energy certificates to not more than 40% of its total energy portfolio. And then the second goal, which is on the next slide, pertains to the entire community of Athens-Clarke County, with by the year 2035, 100% of electricity needs will be met from clean and renewable energy sources. And by 2050, all other energy needs will be met by clean and renewable energy sources. Next slide. So I'll break down what we mean when we say clean and renewable energy sources and these two separate goals we were talking about of 2035 and 2050. So the power that we use to heat and cool our buildings comes from power plants. I'll go into a little more detail on this in future slides, but the carbon emissions associated with things like burning coal and natural gas lead to climate impacts, as well as energy use in buildings, followed by when we talk about gasoline or diesel that we use to power our cars or our bus fleets, that also falls within this energy goal. So the slivers on the right side of this, so the orange for buildings and the yellow for industrial, combined those total 60% of all carbon emissions within Athens-Clarke County. That 60% falls under that 2035 goal of where we say all buildings will rely on clean and renewable energy sources. So that addresses 60% of carbon emissions within Athens-Clarke County. The other 40% will be reached by the year 2050, and that applies to transportation. So we're talking about electrifying our vehicles and transitioning away to potentially alternate forms of transportation as well. Next slide. So when we use the term clean or renewable, what are we talking about? With the way that the Athens-Clarke County government has defined these terms in terms of what is included within the definition of clean and renewable, pathways to achieve that include energy efficiency, solar panel from panels, wind power, hydropower, energy storage, that's also known as battery storage, and renewable energy credits. And not included in the definition at this time include nuclear power, biomass, natural gas, and coal. I'll flag that this is a long-term effort between now and 2035 and 2050. And we recognize that new technologies may come on the market that we can't anticipate, or there may be energy sources that weren't currently included within this current definition that may make more sense under changing conditions in the decades to come. So these are the definitions we're using for the purposes of developing this plan for this year, but that's by no means an indication that they are the only fuel sources that might be considered clean, renewable energy in the years to come. Next slide. So how did we get to setting this goal? It really arose as a grassroots community movement that really began with a local organization called 100% Athens. It built a lot of momentum around discussing environmental issues, clean energy equity, and really just identifying this 100% goal as the pathway to pursue. Their grassroots momentum led to Athens-Clarke County government officially enacting a commitment to make this transition by the years identified earlier in this presentation. Next slide. And so this goal is, compared to a lot of other jurisdictions, I think Athens has really made a point to prioritize this being a community plan, a community commitment, and ensuring that this isn't just a transition from a physics standpoint where we're going to change technology. We're going to ensure that this is a community plan that reflects community priorities. And that was called out explicitly within the legislation that set this goal. So on this slide, you'll see a quote flagging that these efforts will work in a manner to redress historical inequities in our community by prioritizing resources to train and hire people from within marginalized communities to participate in the energy efficiency and renewable energy workforce. Next slide. And here are just a few other excerpts. I won't read all of them, but I'll just surface that there's a strong emphasis on engaging with stakeholders across the community, including utilities, institutional partners, businesses, and individuals as well as just surrounding communities, and a flexibility to continue to revisit the goals in the years to come based on different feasibility assessments that might change with time. All right, next slide. So here are the steps that have happened in the aftermath of the adoption of this 100% clean renewable energy action goal. So in 2020, Athens ratified the 2020 SPLOST, which makes available $15.8 million for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects in Athens. It also established the Community Energy Fund, which will be used to fund local clean energy projects across the community. And it began the process for developing this clean renewable energy action plan, which involved bringing us on and forming a group called this Community Advisory Committee. Right, next slide. The community, excuse me, I said committee, I meant Community Advisory Board. Members of the board include 100% Athens, Action Inc., Athens branch of the U.S. Green Building Council, the Athens Housing Authority, Athens Area Home Builders Association, the Athens Land Trust, Athens Technical College, East Athens Development Corporation, Northeast Georgia Business Alliance, and W&A Engineering, among others. All of these appointments were selected and appointed by Mayor Gertz, and they are charged with supporting planning efforts in the years to come. They meet monthly and they provide insights and direction into the development of this action plan that we are developing, as well as in future years to come of holding the county accountable through its projects. Next slide. Here's a timeline of where we are in the process this year. In January and February, we executed a series of stakeholder charrettes, which were focused conversations with local experts to identify community priorities and gain insights into how we should structure our broader community engagement project, as well as priorities that we need to keep in mind as we assess different clean energy pathways. To continue to gain those insights, we've been conducting business and community organization interviews, as well as executing public town halls tonight, of which is the very first one. So thank you so much for joining us. In the months to come, we'll be spending the summer developing the clean energy plan and continuing to iterate on that plan in the summer and fall with the Community Advisory Board, with an objective to publish the plan in November of this year. Next slide. And just taking apart this small component from the previous slide around the public town halls and feeding into summer and plan development, there's some ways to plug in that are really going to help influence our development of the plan, that are actions that y'all can take. And those include taking the community survey, which is now available online. It's a fairly short survey that's designed to get more specific input from the community on different things for us to take into mind as we pursue the plan development. You can access that survey at accgov.com/100. And on that same page, you'll find a lot of other resources to learn more about the plan. And on that page, you can also sign up for email updates. Next slide. All right, so why clean energy? Let's do a little bit of a deep dive on this. Next slide. Energy is essential. We use it for so many aspects of our daily lives, including natural gas for heating and cooking in our homes, electricity for lighting and electronics, gasoline for powering our vehicles, and more. And on the bottom, you'll see some distribution processes. Nope, your timing was perfect, Maggie. You can move on. And where does electricity come from? These are images of Athens-specific electricity sources. So electricity comes from burning fossil fuels in coal and natural gas facilities, or splitting atoms at nuclear plants, from solar power and from hydropower. Next slide. The places from which our energy comes have an impact. So there are jobs for communities that have mines and wells associated with some of these fossil fuel sources like natural gas and coal, and there are environmental and human health impacts associated with those energy sources, both in strip mining mountains to get coal to power coal plants, to polluted water runoff from some of these mining processes, and then also pollution associated with taking these raw materials and burning them for fuel, including smoke coming out of smokestacks, as well as water quality issues associated with plants as well. Next slide. Dirty energy sources all feed into larger climate change impacts. So in addition to the environmental impacts I just described, we also see from a warming climate that's the result of burning carbon for energy sources. We see increased disease risk from the warming temperatures lead to mosquitoes and other pests in our community, bringing in diseases like West Nile virus or Zika or malaria, diseases that wouldn't have been conceived of as possibilities in our part of the US until recent years, and which we anticipate will continue to get worse as the climate warms. Reduced workdays, sea level rise, which is also going to lead to climate migration, which will lead to communities on the coast becoming increasingly less livable for current residents. And things like sea level rise and climate displacement, coupled with extreme weather events like hurricanes, can lead to climate migration into the regions we're currently in. You might remember with Hurricane Katrina, Georgia saw an influx of new residents that came from climate migrants out of New Orleans. Also in Athens, we're seeing extreme weather events from major rainstorms and other wet weather events that cause flooding and stormwater issues. And dirty energy sources result in poor air quality that lead to asthma and respiratory disease and heart attacks and otherwise that can be averted through a clean energy transition and getting away from these dirtier sources of fuel. Next slide. Clean energy, in addition to creating cleaner air, has a lot of other benefits. So one is local job creation. Clean energy sources like energy efficiency and on-site renewable energy are jobs that can be done locally in the buildings in which we live and work. It also leads to improved public health by improving air quality outside, but also indoors through improving our buildings, through making them more efficient. And those improved buildings make for better comfort for owners and renters and have the potential to really lower operation and maintenance costs and improve housing satisfaction. Next slide. So this is the same definition that we had up earlier, just a reminder of where how we are currently framing the definitions of clean and renewable energy. And so again, these clean energy pathways can be achieved through efficiency, solar, wind, hydropower, renewable energy credits, and battery storage. Next slide. This is a breakdown of our current and expected electricity supply mix. This is the breakdown where over time we'll transition to if nothing changes, if Athens does nothing differently from what it's currently doing. This is how we anticipate our fuel source breakdown will arrive. So currently the two blues on the bottom represent coal and nuclear power. Orange is natural gas, and then the yellow sliver and the light blue sliver at the very top of each of these bars represent hydropower and solar, with solar represented by the yellow. The bar on the far left of the graph, I'm not sure if you can see all of the axes. I know I'm having a little bit of difficulty there. The bar on the far left indicates the current year. The bar in the middle, I think, is 2025 or 2030. And the bar on the far right represents 2035. So you can see between now on the left and 2035 on the far right that solar is going to increase substantially just under current conditions, but it's still only going to increase to the point where it's representing about 30% clean energy across the community by 2035. And while that is most definitely an improvement, that is not going to get us to this 100% goal that we've set for ourselves. And so that's where it comes up to that county to exercise the leadership it's taken in setting this goal and really execute well through a community-driven, well-designed clean energy action plan that it implements in the years to come. So next slide. Currently, Athens-Clarke County is served by four different electricity providers. Georgia Power serves more customers than anyone else locally, followed by Jackson EMC, Walton EMC, and Rail EMC. And those three I listed were in no particular order in terms of customer base. Natural gas is provided by 16 certified gas marketers, and water is provided by Athens Public Utilities. So I threw this up here with the map demonstrating the breakdown of those four different utilities, just to highlight that a lot of collaboration is going to be required as we move ahead, as we work with these four different energy providers. So now we'll take it to the next slide, and I am going to hand things over to Matt Cox of the GreenLink Group to walk us through clean energy in Athens and Athens clean energy pathways. Matt?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Cox. I'm the CEO of GreenLink Analytics. We're one of the partners here that's helping to take a look at what the energy future might be for Athens and Clarke County. All right, let's hit the next slide. Great, thank you. So this is just giving us a sense of how energy is currently used and how much money it costs, both in Georgia and within Athens. So we're seeing today about $23 billion leaving Georgia. We don't have a lot of natural fossil resources in the state, so you can see a breakdown there on how much we're paying to import coal, natural gas, and oil. In looking specifically at Athens, oh, sorry, one other point of comparison there. That's almost the same as the state budget. So the annual state budget's 27 billion and change. So we're pretty close to matching that in terms of what's spent importing fossil fuels to the state. Looking at Athens in particular, we can see that there's about $500 million also leaving Athens each year, and that's also to pay for those same kinds of energy sources. When we do our forecasts out through 25, we anticipate that that number increases by almost another $100 million. So it's a large amount of money, and it's growing. One potential impact of clean energy on this would be keeping that money local. So we have the ability through things like energy efficiency to reduce the overall energy spend, and then renewable energy will keep that generation here as well and reduce the overall amount of money that has to be spent on these other fossil resources. For the next slide, keeping that money local translates into job creation. So if we spend it here, we're going to create jobs here. And there's an awful lot of jobs that will be supported through a higher investment in local clean energy. So some of those are listed there on the side as to where those professions, the professions that are likely to see growth through higher levels of clean energy investment. Within Athens, we developed a model that looks specifically at the Athens economy to see how a 100% clean energy transition could lead to new job creation and where those jobs would be. What we found was that 100% transition could create nearly 10,000 new jobs through 2035, which is almost the same size as adding another UGA to the Athens workforce. Additionally, we calculated what the impact on income growth would be from those new jobs being created and put that on a basis of what's that equal to for all of the residents in Athens, which comes out to a little over $600 per year per resident over the next 15 years as those investments play out. Obviously, this also ties back towards the goals in the resolution and the commitment towards trying to create and improve equity in the outcomes for marginalized communities. There's an opportunity here to start to create jobs and build wealth in those communities. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are a number of local businesses that are increasingly prioritizing clean energy. So we've highlighted a couple of them here. AES is a local solar developer that's based in Athens, but they do work all over the state. They've been the recent winner of the Solarize Athens campaign. So if you got in on that one, they may be putting solar on your roof soon. The Terrapin Beer Company is another example where their building owner that has gone ahead and made an investment in increasing the amount of clean energy that they use and using solar to offset their on-site demand. They did that through Cherry Street, which does third-party clean energy development. So the nice part about those is that they can be done with no money up front, and it's paid through a power purchase agreement. In Georgia, we call those solar energy procurement agreements, but it's the same general concept, that you pay a fixed dollar per kilowatt hour for the energy coming off of the solar, and then that's used on-site, primarily on-site. And then you can see an estimate here of what Terrapin believes they will avoid in terms of CO2 emissions from that installation. And then the last one that we've highlighted here is W&A Engineering. They're a local engineering firm that's actually a representative on the Community Advisory Board. And they recently completed the construction here of this Earthcraft facility, which also included a solar array that was developed by AES. Next slide, please. So Solarize is a popular type of program, originally started out in Portland, Oregon over a decade ago, but it allows for things like the bulk purchase of solar and helps to bring down the cost for all participants in the process. Athens has now had 2 Solarize campaigns. The most recent one, there were more than 300 participants in that particular program that deployed nearly 500 kilowatts of new rooftop solar, or will, assuming all those projects get built. That's how many folks have signed up. They also saw over 250 kilowatt hours of storage procured. And again, through this program, it's able to be done at lower cost. So there's a lot of solar plus storage being developed through that effort. New Cheese Space also, as a nonprofit in Athens, provides resources and mental health support for local musicians. They received a solar array as a part of the Solarize 1.0 campaign. And then the other project that we've noted on this slide is the West Broad project from Athens Land Trust. So the Land Trust is also a CAB member. They conducted energy audits, provided education, implemented energy and water efficiency improvements at homes in the historically Black West Broad neighborhood. Ended up that this was a partnership between the Athens Land Trust and the Athens-Clarke County Unified Government, and also involved the Athens Land Trust Young Urban Builders Youth Program. That whole project, or part of that project, was funded by a grant from the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network. So a good example of bringing together resources from within and without the community to do some job creation, skills development, and help improve energy equity across the community. Next slide, please. So we do see clean energy tied towards positive health outcomes, and there's a lot in that area. So we can talk about how if you make the home more efficient or the business more efficient, that can lead to reduced environmental pollution, both indoor and outdoor air quality improvements, which translates at the end of the day towards better health, both better health outcomes. So the Athens Wellbeing Project is one example. Here it's a collaboration among several Athens-Clarke County area institutional partners and community stakeholders. That mission is to empower the Athens community with meaningful data to lead to better informed decision-making, improvements in service delivery, and greater quality of life. Right now, what we see is you've got about 9% of the county population reporting mold problems in the home, and that households that are reporting higher presence of mold are more likely to be reporting higher rates of asthma as well. Okay, let's hit the next slide. So equity plays a key role in this conversation. One part of this is to try to improve energy democracy. So communities that have not historically been included in the planning process, there's an explicit effort going on to try to change that in this case. And then there's also an effort, so that's just part of the process equity, trying to improve the equity of the process. There's also distributional equity concerns in terms of how burdens are spread across community. And so part of the effort here will be to improve choice, to provide pathways towards ownership, to make sure that pricing is fair. There's some incredible research that has shown that in low-income communities, it's actually more expensive to access energy-efficient appliances and equipment. So be trying to keep all of those things in mind and to address those kinds of barriers through this process. And obviously, this is a multi-decade process. This will be a long effort. What do we mean when we talk about energy equity? So I think the graphic tries to do a pretty good job of showing that if each bike is the same size, that's not necessarily appropriate for all of the people who might need or be interested in riding a bike. what we're talking about in the energy context is fairness and the distribution of costs and benefits. So as the bike is showing you, that doesn't mean that everybody's the same. It's not all equality there. But one thing that we are trying to address is, energy security and reducing energy burdens, which is the percent of household income spent on utility bills. Relatedly, we've also found that energy burden, the housing stock, and health outcomes are all correlated. So it's not just that we can start to say logically that there's connections, but it's actually statistically the case that those are connected to one another. So greater energy equity itself can lead directly towards a healthier population. All right, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the percent of yearly income that is spent on your utility bills, that's what our energy burden is. The national average is generally somewhere between 3 and 4%. It depends on how incomes grew and how utility bills went over the course of a particular year. But if you think 3%, you're probably pretty close. Nationally, it's considered high if you're spending 6% or more of your income on utility bills. That's about 2 standard deviations away from average. So you're getting pretty far away from typical. And then 10% is considered a severe energy burden. When you take a look at Georgia in particular, what you'll see is that there's a median energy burden of about 5%. And when you look at Athens-Clarke County in particular, you see that it goes up to 7%. So the obvious takeaway from that is that if the average is 7%, then we are already above that threshold for being in high energy burden. The average household in Athens is experiencing high energy burden. That's also, if we were looking just at electricity, the energy burden is about 3 times higher than the national average in Athens in particular. Our highest energy burden census tract in Athens is primarily built up of a lot of students. I don't think that would be a large surprise. The second highest, though, has a median income of about $9,000 a year with an energy burden that's about 20%. 16% of that is electric spend, another 4% coming out of gas, which is much of the downtown area. And the other key thing that we would want to note here, as you can see on the map, is that there's 2 of the highest energy burden neighborhoods in the entire state are in Athens. So this is a particularly pronounced issue within the Athens community. Next slide, please. So reasons that we actually care about energy burden, aside from it just being expensive. I mean, if you imagined needing to spend 25 to 30% of your income towards a utility bill, that's effectively similar to needing to spend a rent or mortgage check towards your utilities. When the other reasons that we flagged here on this slide are to show one survey result recently from the Department of Energy was that 31% of Americans have either skipped a meal or skipped filling a prescription in order to pay a utility bill. So people are sacrificing their health in order to keep the lights on. And that's only been exacerbated by what we saw with COVID-19, with folks losing their jobs. The utility moratoriums went into effect early last year, but we also saw many of those canceled sometime around late summer in many parts of the state and the country that would have started to create bad debt and arrearages and all sorts of negative consequences for folks. Another component here is the number one reason that people take out a short-term loan. So these are things like payday loans, title loans, those kinds of short-term loan products, is to pay a utility bill. And you can see fairly easily how that kind of thing could spiral towards a circle of poverty. And so with those kinds of things in mind, focusing on clean energy locally can actually help address these issues. If we have energy efficiency deployed in homes, if we get solar deployed in these communities, that can reduce the total amount of energy required to meet the demands of those homes, which can then obviously reduce the bills. So you can simultaneously reduce the energy burden and increase the home comfort, as we've been talking about, also increase the health of the occupants at the same time that you're creating jobs and stimulating the local economy. So these are all things that we can do through clean energy with an equity focus. All right, next slide. So this just gives a little bit more of a wonky detail on that. But these are all the ways where you might have air leaks or losses that you would want to tighten up within a home. But there's many things that might be done to assist. So there's low, no cost efforts. This may be things like addressing lighting or changing some behaviors in the home. Education can help on a number of these fronts. Also taking advantage of existing rebates. So many utilities do offer rebates on energy efficient equipment. That helps make it cheaper. Generally, these are on the order of a 50% reduction in the cost. So those can be quite helpful. Weatherization is another thing that can help. And so there's a national program that does weatherization, although it's generally underfunded. There's roughly 500 households that get weatherized in Georgia each year through that type of programming. So there's an opportunity to kind of increase the funding levels that go towards that work and weatherize the homes, increase insulation, fix up holes, do the caulking, that kind of work to just tighten up the building shell. And then lastly, there's deep energy retrofits where you would have a holistic look at the building. So you see this with both residential and commercial buildings, efforts to take a step back, look at all of the equipment, do some energy audits, identify what the most cost-effective pathways forward. It's not uncommon through that kind of effort to see 40–50% energy savings through energy efficiency. Okay, so next thing that we're going to hit here is to talk a bit about the clean energy pathways. So next slide. This is our forecast for total electricity demand in Athens. What we can see right now is that we're a little over 1.6 million megawatt hours a year today. That's forecast to grow to about 1.8 million megawatt hours. So there's a little bit of growth. The growth is primarily concentrated in the residential and the commercial sectors, but there is growth through 2035. Next slide. So similar to how the business as usual energy supply is not going to get us to 100% clean energy by 2035, this is overall impact here. The changes in how buildings are using energy just being continued under business as usual also are not going to have a significant impact on CO2 emission reductions. So you can see everything's moving down, just not that rapidly, not fast enough. Here's the mix. So this is two different perspectives. So one is looking at the business as usual forecast. So if we do nothing, we wake up, it's 2035, and we realize we have to hit the goal. What are we facing? So the projected energy supply would be a little over 20% solar, so significant growth in solar from where it is today. 2% from all other renewables, which is about the same as it is now. And then obviously the vast majority coming from coal, gas, and nuclear. If we take a look at the maximum effort, so this is really pursuing all of the cost-effective energy efficiency opportunities, helping people go solar at their own homes and businesses, getting more storage deployed, all of that kind of activity, storage meaning like battery storage, what we see is we can offset almost 40% of the energy demand through energy efficiency. Solar comes in at about the same level, about 20%. And we still have a 39% wedge that's coming in through coal, gas, and nuclear. So in both of those cases, if those are going to be, in order to meet the 100% goal, we would need to purchase renewable energy credits, which represent 1 megawatt hour of electricity demand that's been generated by a renewable resource somewhere. So we may be able to source those from Georgia, we may have to source them nationally, but the bottom line for this is that doing everything that's within local control, we basically can get 2/3 of the way there. The next couple of slides show what the impacts would be, though, of those efforts. So with the maximum effort, we're looking at seeing benefits of about $5 billion back in Athens. This is through cumulative through 2035. Comes at a cost of about $540 million. So we're not saying that it's free, but you do have a pretty good benefit cost ratio out of that. It's a 9.6 benefit cost ratio. Job creation will come in those sectors that we looked at a few slides back. So this is, again, about that 10,000 jobs. Public health savings are significant, about $300 million there, which is roughly 13. If we were to put that in health insurance premium terms, it'd be about $13 off of your health insurance premium each month. And then the CO2 emissions avoided is a little over 6 million. And because of COVID, I imagine it's easier for folks to relate to having a number of months without cars on the road. But this is about 22 months without cars, nearly 2 years where you wouldn't have to worry about traffic. Next slide gives I think I'm almost at the end here, folks. We get the full impact. So this is how much money would be saved off of people's bills. It's a little over $300 million. The bill savings to the folks who get into the program, so we're having the energy efficiency, have the solar, have the batteries deployed, it's an $87 a month savings off of their power bills. There's a nice spillover benefit here in that these reductions actually make the whole system cheaper. And so we're able to see a $9 savings that should accrue to the people who are not in those programs. So this can be done in a way that lowers costs for everyone. And then from an energy equity standpoint, we see today we're at 7.1%. If we leave things alone and just go business as usual, that number increases to 7.5%. So things aren't great, and they look like they'll get worse if we don't take action. If we do, we can reduce that energy burden to 6.3% community-wide. So there's an opportunity here to reduce the energy burden by 1.2% across the Athens community. Okay, and I will pass this back to Megan.
Thanks, Matt. Now we're ready to go into our Q&A portion of the meeting, and we'll go on to the next slide here. All right.
All right. I'll take it from here. Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey Shea. I am a native Athenian, and I work at Southface as a policy coordinator. I'm going to jump in here to help support our Q&A, and I'll just explain a couple logistics before we get started. So we've gotten a few questions through the chat, and Maggie, I see one that seems like a potentially urgent tech need. If you could answer Broderick here. But we've gotten a few questions through the chat, and we also have some pre-submitted questions. So I am going to talk us through those. And when I do, I'll read the question, and I'll give you the opportunity to, if you'd like, request to speak, and either add on to your question, amend it, etc. And then I'll kind of toss the questions here from Megan to Matt to Mike, depending on who makes the most sense to answer. So there's the tiny little phone icon button again. If you click on participants, then it'll come come up and it'll be in that corner there. It's tiny, and that's how you're going to request to unmute yourself if you'd like. If you don't want to talk and you just want to let your question speak for itself, that's totally fine too, no pressure, but that is your option. So we have some questions from the audience that I'll speak to, and then we have some questions that we want to ask you, because we really want to get to know what y'all's priorities are for this plan. And that's a big part of what we're here for today. So we look forward to that. And so about half the time I'll flip us over to that part of the conversation. All right, with that, can we go to the next slide? Ah, beautiful. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start with a question. A few people pre-submitted questions when we started. So let's see. I'm going to start with a question first for Mike. And it's Sarah Evans that asked the question. Sarah, if you're on, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to add to the question or amend it or anything like that. But Sarah asked what organizations the Sustainability Office plans on collaborating with. Sarah, if you'd like to unmute yourself, go ahead and request it, and Maggie will accept your request.
The quick answer is everybody. But what we have done to actually reach out to this point, we've had 3 charrettes, and there were contacts made with 80 to 90 community organizations. We've also been doing our stakeholder interviews. So far, we've talked to 17 different businesses and industry folks. We have a few more of those scheduled. We've also connected with some other organizations through that same stakeholder meeting process. We've also talked now to 2 of our major power providers, and we're working to contact the 3rd and 4th, and just haven't heard back from them quite yet. So the answer is really we are looking. We have the survey out there, so that's also going to be something we want help. We'd love anybody on this call or this meeting to reach out, share that link, provide that information. So we are looking collaboratively pretty broadly in our community. I hope that answered the question.
Awesome. We didn't see an unmute request from Sarah here, so that's we'll move on from that one. Thank you, Mike. So another question that we got, it's kind of a 2-parter. This is from Broderick. So Broderick has asked, how can we apply equity? And this is a great question. How can we apply equity in hiring and pay/labor benefits for workers from marginalized communities entering the green and renewable energy field? Prevailing wages, paid opportunities while in training programs, apprenticeship standards that align with the Labor Department, etc. So thanks, Broderick, for that question. Not sure if you're still on. Feel free to request to unmute if you'd like. And I see Broderick's raising his hand. Broderick, you're so close to the unmute button. Maggie, I don't know if you can help him out. But in the meantime, I'll ping that question over to Matt. I can repeat it if you'd like.
I think I found it in the chat. I think it's going to require a lot of work. I mean, it's going to be a conscientious focus that needs to come from all sectors, and really to make that happen. There's certainly things that have been successful around procurement practices, to where the public sector can at least help push that forward themselves. But it's going to require buy-in across the board. So I think there's going to be a lot of education, a lot of communication, a lot of discussion required in order to help there, and to help develop the training programs to build that kind of infrastructure to just happen naturally eventually.
I'm going to unmute Broderick now.
Okay.
Broderick, good to go.
Oh yeah, awesome. Hello everyone. Thank y'all for putting this together first off and foremost. Yeah, it's exciting to hear about this and to give input to it as well, especially as early on as we are. But yeah, my concerns are around the labor aspects that will be going into this project and process. Specifically, I mean, I heard you mention about creating of 10,000 jobs and even referencing the University of Georgia. But I'm a little biased when it comes to that because a lot of the jobs at University of Georgia still have people in poverty wages, basically. About 40% of the workforce at UGA consists of Black and brown labor, yet they're not making enough to take care of their families. And so that's why, I posed the question about how do we bring equity into the hiring and the pay into this new energy field that's going to bring in millions of dollars and save the county millions of dollars. So how do we transfer those savings to our people, the actual labor that's going to be making this renewable energy goal possible? I'm trying to organize with a good number of people around that issue. And so it's very important to the community. We've spoken to a few energy companies, including Cherry Street. And so if they are on the committee, how serious will y'all take their recommendations that they make that organizations give to those groups?
I'll pick that one up, Bailey. Just a couple of things to point at right away. Athens-Clarke County as a government has, through its ACORE program, I don't know if you've heard about that
Yeah,
was
I've heard.
implemented. It is a program that was implemented through our economic development unit out of the manager's office, where we're taking young people, putting them through both job training opportunities and creating public work projects as part of that. I personally benefited tremendously because we had their crew down in Dudley Park removing invasive plants for about 6 weeks, and they transformed that park. But in the process of doing that in the land restoration, they also learned skills and helped career development, learned not only about the skills needed to remove the invasives, but also about land management, about forestry, about heavy equipment operation, about tools in the trade, prescribed fire. So a variety of things that they were able to also see could lead to another career development there. We also worked in conjunction with the Athens Land Trust and the West Broad project and worked through them. They were doing a lot of weatherization projects and the Young Urban Builders, and their program there was also something we partnered up on. So we do have opportunities that we can promote. We're also going to be very active with the business community in trying to figure out. I mean, you bring up a great point, and it's one that, because we're in the planning stage, we don't have really good answers for. We do know the businesses are also, there are a lot of businesses that are committed to creating change and bringing equity as part of that change. So we see their interest, and at least with some, we see a commitment. So it's just a matter of what's the best path to get there? And I think this is a step. And Broderick, I think one of what your question is there, it's valuable. And I also think your participation in helping keep this move forward is also critical. That's how it will happen, is us
Yeah.
walking through this trail together.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that answer. I plan to be engaged.
Thank you.
Thanks so
We're
much.
always open if you know some more too.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna flip us to another question here. I think we have a lot more. So let's see. Under this program, what would the average ACC resident's home energy system look like? And that question is again from Sarah, actually. Sorry, I doubled up on Sarah before I got to others. Megan, do you want to take that one?
I would actually send that to Matt.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so there's plenty of upgrades that have been identified as cost effective in our review of the existing Athens building footprint and looking at the residential sector in particular. There's been identified opportunities to cost effectively improve the average home's energy performance. So sorry, it's a lot of words, by about 27%. So that's going to come the lowest hanging of the low hanging fruit of energy efficiency is the deployment of things like LED light bulbs and programmable thermostats. So those probably come first, but then you also look at things like the deployment heat pumps, electric heat pumps in particular, have a great return. And then you also have things like adding insulation in the home also is a fairly low cost option with a very nice return on investment. Those are the major things that we would expect to see deployed. There's a larger list of about 15 items that all pass the cost effectiveness screening as opportunities that are included as a part of the modeling that we've done around what you could and would expect to do with energy efficiency.
So I'm currently working with Sarah in order to help get her audio up, but I've noticed that James has raised his hand, so I'm going to allow him to speak, if that's all right with everyone. Let's see. Oops. And James, you should be good to go. Or maybe not. I apologize about that, y'all.
No worries. I was going to say, if we see James, we'll give him the floor. If not, I can skip to another question. All right. So the next question is a two-parter. So first question here, these are from Amy Cassane. Amy's one of our CAB members from WNA Engineering. We're happy to have her on.
Oh.
Amy's question really.
Okay, so James is here. Give me a second.
Sure.
James, you're good to go.
Hello. My interest is a little different, possibly from some. I am representing an organization. We've bought some land. We're trying to develop a little village in northwest Athens that we hope will have a zero carbon footprint, among other things. And so my main interest here is to find out what sort of support there might be for such a project. I hear.
You're good. I'm gonna turn it over to Mike, James, in a second, but I will say that we are going to have a post-event survey that's going to pop up for follow-up questions where you might get back in touch with us and share our contact information as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike, but there will be those opportunities just so everyone knows to follow up.
And James,
Okay.
you highlighted exactly one of the reasons why we started this clean and renewable action planning process. That is precisely one of the big needs that we're seeing in the community. We're hearing that from the businesses as well. The need to have education, to have technical information, to be able to look at or suggest where additional information or vendors could be found. What makes a good contractor? What makes a good how do you know when we're getting a good deal or just a shyster coming up to sell you something? Those are all great questions. Those are exactly why we're doing this. So the answer right now is we will provide as much support as we can within the limited amount that we have right now, which is mostly just information. But we see that as becoming a more robust interaction out of this process. So I think you've touched exactly on one of the reasons why we wanted to do the plan and how we feel the plan can benefit the community. I know that's less of help than you were hoping for right now, but some of the stuff we can do is cross-connect you over with other members in the government who have some expertise you would be interested in, such as our stormwater people and our solid waste folks and other folks in the government who can provide you with some information as well. So we can kind of help guide a little bit of that process as well.
Yeah, well, we need information. We're not professionals. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to make a place where we would like to live, and maybe some other people can live also.
Outstanding. We'll reach out and we'll start kind of trying to put some stuff together for you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, James. So I'm going to pivot back to the next question. All right. So these questions were from Amy. So I think these are great questions, Amy. This is can you calculate how it being the plan and the efforts that we'll be putting in to implementation of the plan. Can you calculate how this will increase the average annual actual wage in Athens? And can you calculate how the jobs would increase the average annual wage in Athens? If so, I guess only including employed residents. So Matt, can you take that question?
Yeah, short answer is yes. So yeah, the model will, it's providing a forecast of incomes across the Athens community. And so that is primarily built up of wages. So we are able to see how the average household, it's at a household level, so it won't be an individual, but we are able to see how the average household income is changing, and that would be both for employed and unemployed members of the community.
Seems like Jed Hewitt has also raised his hand to speak, so I'm going to connect him to audio. Jed, if you can go ahead and also request to send your audio out as well, then I can unmute you and you'll be able to speak. Okay.
All right. Good evening. And first off, appreciate everyone and your time for setting this up. It's really encouraging. As a new Athens community member, been here now about 6 months or so. I've noticed there's a lot of development occurring not only in Athens-Clarke County here, but in surrounding counties. And I see the push from Metro Atlanta pushing out to Oglethorpe County, Walton, Barrow, you name it, all the surrounding counties, and 50-acre sites, subdivisions, are going in quickly and with a lot of and it's through the position I hold with the Environmental Protection Division. But I guess my question is, with this land being bought up and additional housing being developed, the solar installations, if they're not done at the local or at the individual household level, take a lot of area and take a lot of space. And so in the land management field, when you see historic farmland that's being bought up by developers and they're putting in infrastructure to build neighborhoods and houses, and then even historic forest land that's being bought up. I have seen some historic forest land being converted to solar fields, but I'm just curious, here within Athens community and within the county specific, how is that dynamic going to look, as we look into the future 10, 20 years from now? Is the focus going to be, save the trees and continue Georgia forestry, or are we going to need that land and those green spaces to generate green and renewable energy? So it's sort of a mixed bag, but it's just a thought I've had, and in my mind, there's a delicate balance there between development, energy consumption, and then actual green and renewable energy production. So whoever can take that, be great.
Thanks, Jed. I think this sounds like the perfect question for Mike.
Absolutely. It's a great question, and it highlights something that we are both acknowledging and closely examining when it comes to the energy plan. There's always a push and pull. Clean energy even when you have clean energy, there's a price to be paid for that. You've got to get the materials and the parts to bring, to build the solar panels. you got to have the water to produce the solar panels. You got to have all the things you need to install them and maintain them, and then you have the waste product when you're finished. So nothing comes without a price. And there is a big pull and push in the community. If we clear 1,000 acres to create a solar farm, we also, we cut down trees. That creates a carbon issue. We change the landscape, but we're producing clean energy. So this isn't a clean answer. It is going to, as I tell folks with a lot of things, we're making the best decision among a lot of really bad choices. And that's some of what's there. Now, what has Athens done that might sort of mitigate some of that? We are looking at, Athens does look toward more dense development. We are also, as part of this plan, we're also looking at what options we have for making it easier to install more local based and things like microgrids or solar procurement agreements, some things that could bring kind of bring that home and make it on a smaller scale, and also concentrate it in an area with can we set our some of our planning regulations up so that it's becomes easier to install solar in parking lots. Those are all things that we're looking at, that we're examining, and part of what this plan is going to help shape and drive. So I think that is absolutely something to bring out. Is part of this conversation and part of what you as a community member and leaders in the community. We've got some commissioners on this call who will be hearing that, and that's part of what that back and forth discussion to try to find that best balance between that. I hope that was a good enough answer.
Chad, does that help
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah, it did, and it's a great conversation. I look forward. I'm going to tap into the future town halls here, and I got plenty more questions, but we'll let everyone participate. And again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your question.
And if you would like to have a continued conversation as well, you're welcome to reach out to our office, and Mike and I would be happy to speak with you.
Thank you.
So we have one more question that was submitted during the event, and then a couple more that were pre-submitted before the event. And so I'm going to rely on my colleagues, Megan and Aaron, to ping me when it's time to move along. But I'm going to keep asking these questions for now. So this other one, I'm going to start with. Let's see. What looks like a pretty general question that I'm gonna tap Mike for from Jim Grimes, that was pre-submitted before the event started. This is, what sort of support can the city give for projects that aim for maximum sustainability? So this sounds like a sustainability question for Mike.
Yeah, and there are some things that can be done. For example, depending on the project, it's hard to answer. There are available options depending on whether you're talking business or commercial or residential. There are people that can help with solid waste issues and disposal. We have groups inside solid waste that look for hard to dispose of things. We have several businesses that are actually targeting zero waste to the landfill concept and trying to reduce that. So we have folks who are working hard toward that end of it. And there's also our stormwater people that are willing to work and try to help figure out best ways to reduce both runoff and to minimize the stormwater utility cost associated with developments. We are able to provide some limited information on solar, and that's some of another area that we're looking at developing more resources for. And helping with that, we have some training sessions that are training modules that are out on our webpage. So there are some resources that are out there, and I would also turn that back and say, what do you need? We're hearing, that's part of what this plan is about. Is we want the community to say we need resources to be there to help us do X, Y, and Z, and that's why it becomes really important to hear that, to know what that is, and to have as many people tell us the more of that we know, the more of that we're told, we're able to then to not only try to put those together, but then begin to get funding to do just that.
All right, I'm going to allow James to speak now. James, you should be good to go. All right.
James Grimes, Jim Grimes. I spoke earlier. We're the same person. So just if I have a moment for the floor, I wanted to actually, because I think Mike had answered my question earlier, speak just a little bit to the person who spoke just before me. One of the things you're talking about, finding ways to use the land that we have efficiently. One of the things the property we bought has a transcontinental gas pipeline right away, right to the middle of it. One of the reasons we can afford it. But one of the things we're looking at is building a solar array that runs along the north edge of it and using that to shelter the parking area for residents there and things of that sort. We've looked at permeable paving and planting that. I talked to the guy who is the security man for the gas pipeline about putting perennial grass for pasturage for horses over the gas pipeline, which will capture a lot of carbon. So there's a lot of things that can be done if you look at it creatively. That's what I wanted to say. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so with that, I'm going to move us on. Thank you again. So with that, I'm going to move us on. Maggie, if you could pivot to the next slide. We want to take some time here before we wrap up to really get feedback from you all. And so how this is going to work is similar to how we've been doing it throughout the evening. So I'm going to walk us through these questions, as many as we can get through here. And if you would like to share your thoughts, your input, this is what we're here for. And so please either drop a comment in the chat and I'll be sure to read it aloud and capture it for the notes from this that will definitely influence the plan, or raise your hand for Maggie to unmute you. So with that, I'd like to open it up, and I'll ask you all, what would you like to see prioritized in this Clean and Renewable Energy Action Plan after hearing what we've learned today? Again, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll capture it, or speak up. All right, we're hearing city buildings and uses. Prioritizing city buildings and uses. Absolutely. All right. And we might have some Bueller moments here, and that's perfectly fine. That's how these things go sometimes. We'll move us on to the next one in case it spurs any thoughts or reactions. Oh, we're hearing from...
Yeah, I could be our chat box moderator for this because we did get a few additionals quickly. So one was energy efficiency, !
Nice.
And another was additional electric charging stations around the county for vehicles. So the first one was from Andrew Saunders, and that second comment was from Jed Hewitt. Thank you very much.
Nice. So keep those coming if you have them, and move us on. Which clean energy resources should be used the most after what we've learned and talked through this evening? And from your experience. And all right, we're hearing solar. Georgia has plenty of sun, absolutely. Steps for moving forward on how to use 100% renewable SPLOST funds. How can we get going? Absolutely. That $15.8 million that Megan spoke to earlier that's dedicated to clean energy in the SPLOST is going to be a key part of implementing clean energy plan and moving us forward.
Right. We're also seeing, with regard to the first question, find many ways to incentivize investment for residential and commercial. Thanks, Amy. And then there's a question from Jed here that I'm going to ask Mike or Matt to chime in on, who has the right a good answer for this. So the question is, has anyone discussed hydroelectric on either of the branches of the Oconee River? I know that's a big deal in many ways, but we have lots of water running through ACC.
Yeah, we do. Am I making sure I'm not muted? Well, we do. As you well, as you probably or may not know, there are a lot of regulations around damming streams and the impact on aquatic communities up and down, which has kind of changed. A lot of communities are actually taking their dams down to allow that free flow and to protect the aquatic habitats that are there. We did have a conversation with a dam south of Athens. And what we ran into, the complexity you run into is some of the state laws that govern how energy is created, sold, and transported. So the quick answer is yes. There is a much more deeper dive into that and some of the complexities of trying to get hydroelectric moved from a source to a source specific to a end user specific. It's a very big challenge, and Matt or Megan, y'all might have some others to add to that answer as well.
Sure. The one other thing that's been, aside from the additional environmental concerns that slowed down hydro developments across the U.S., has just been the cost curve. So it's the one technology that shares a trend with nuclear power, that it's the only one getting more expensive over time to develop across the U.S. So there's opportunities. Most of the stuff that's been identified recently has looked at much smaller scale developments or placements in existing canals and infrastructure that could be uprated or added to. So like micro hydro, there's some interesting stuff going on there, but large scale applications, I think they face significant hurdles to development.
Thanks, Matt. I know we're almost at 8 o'clock, which is our scheduled end time. So I want to give people the time back if they need it, but our team is available to stay on for a few more minutes to to go through the rest of these questions for anyone who wants to stay on. So for those of you who may need to leave, thank you so much for joining us. You'll get a post-meeting survey as well as a follow-up email from us, just connecting you to some of the resources we mentioned earlier. And for any who are able to stay on, we'd love to keep this conversation going for a few more minutes.
And let me mention one thing on the post meeting follow-up. Please share with us your thoughts of this format. We know that COVID has kind of altered a lot, and we aren't in person, which is what our preference would have been. We did turn the video off at the recommendation of our public information office. I'd like to see people. I mean, I'd love to see people and have people see other people. But maybe you're happy with not seeing each other. Well, you can tell I didn't shave today. So, however, we'd love to hear that feedback on what you felt about the format. If you had suggestions for a little bit better way to do this, we're open within the limits that we can of the rules that we have been told to us. So. And we are going to ask the question about turning on video if people feel that that is a strong desire and interest. So thank you.
So
one person already said yes, video.
Yeah, so like Megan said, we'll stay on a little bit longer and get through some of these additional questions, but there's going to be plenty of opportunities for input moving forward. So I want to move us to the next two questions, really, which are kind of go hand in hand. What does success look like for you? And how should we measure success? And I want to read a response that came in the chat from Commissioner Myers here on the question 3 about what success looks like for you. So I'm just reading this from the chat. Reaching our energy goals and making sure that our lower income residents get the energy efficiency and lower utility bills sooner in this process. And that means somehow figuring out how to get our multifamily apartment complexes and rental landlords in on all this sooner rather than later. Real success would also look like us having a model green jobs program that benefits Black and Brown communities in a way that makes, I think this is a typo, NPR segments on. So I think that's a typo.
No, it's not in PBS or NPR, National Public Radio. We got NPR here in Athens, so we want them coming out to do segments on our program.
As a lifelong NPR fan, I want to clarify that I did get the acronym. I was just a little bit confused about the phrasing there towards the end. But thank you so much, Commissioner Myers, for your input. Sorry, I flubbed it for you.
We want the radio stations. Come on.
But any other additional thoughts that we'd like to share on success, what success looks like for you, and how we should be measuring it?
We had another one come in from Michael that said we need to prioritize tackling improvements in the quality of shelter for our most energy burdened so that we don't leave folks behind in this transition. So thank you for that feedback, Michael.
Great input. I see we've lost a few folks, so I'm going to wrap us up here with our last question for anyone who'd like to share. How can we ensure that we are accountable to the vision and goals that we'll be setting forth in the Clean Energy Plan years and decades from now? I'm seeing a hand. And I'm seeing from Michael, setting clear metrics and timelines. Agreed. What is a plan if not, needing metrics and timelines? And from Commissioner Myers, setting up a citizen commission to oversee it, like we have the Athens in Motion Citizen Commission. Great input. Great idea.
And Jim, I'm sorry, I was unsure if your hand was still raised from the last time that you spoke, but I did allow you permission to speak if you wanted to speak again. So we'll give you that space.
And also look at the end, we'll have our emails back up if you want to contact Maggie or myself and talk more about the North Athens project.
Well, Jim, speak
I
now.
didn't realize that I was just going to say I didn't really realize I had my hand up. Sorry.
It's okay.
That's okay. Thank you.
No worries. We like this idea, or I like this idea. I'll speak for myself. Hiring a full-time person as the point person to keep this all going and focus. I know that Mike and Maggie are really doing the work of like a team of 10 or 20 sometimes, so I'm sure they'd agree with that. All right. Thank you all for staying on a little bit past time. We've recorded all of this feedback, and Mike, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike, and he'll go over what the follow-ups are going to be in a little bit more detail, and make sure that you guys can follow up and contact us.
Yes, please. So we did cover quite a bit tonight. We'll have 4 more of these. We'd like for you to spread the word if you can. They're going to be a similar format, but I imagine the questions would change as we move forward as well. If you can go to the next slide, Maggie, I think we have our contact information on that next slide. There we go. Those are the town hall meetings, and a little bit more about the survey. You can go to the survey on that site. And we will be sending you the PDFs of the slide, post-event survey, and links to the upcoming town halls. So those are things you can expect to come to you through the email. And other than that, we want to again thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We know your time is precious, but your information has been priceless. So thank you for helping us. And as always, keep those cards and letters rolling in. We love them. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're dropping off now. I was waiting for everyone to drop off, but I think
I'm just copying the last of the